So I thought I'd give you a bit of update on the firmware side of things, because while I've been waiting for some boards to come, I thought I'd play with the code, tickle it a little bit. So basically, everything's had a bit of a refresh. This might be a bit similar to the last firmware video if you've seen that, but if not, then you can watch this one. So basically, I've added a few things that I think might be useful. So obviously, text editor, which can then eventually run code, calculator, to-do list, a calendar, two-factor authentication, so you can do the time-based codes that you get on websites, or it might even be able to work as a actual security key, not sure yet. E-reader, because e-ink screen, why not? And then settings to mess with things. So the editor is the same as the last one, in a way, but it has had a bit of a tickle. So you can now open a new file. There's now a sub-menu inside, so you don't have to go into the menu to open a file, things like that. That was in the last one. So if we make a new file, it'll ask us for a file name, and then if you've chosen a file name that's already there, it'll tell you. So you can either open that file or make another new file, or it tries to see the same name again. That's probably a little bug that needs fixing, so let's just open the file instead. It gets all the folders, gets the files, and then the folders on the left, files on the right. So you can choose a different folder, it shows you what's in that folder. I might change it so that it only shows you what's in the folder when you select it, because that obviously slows it down a little bit. But once we get down to something meaningful, like some source code, a little bit further, there we go, so pop across to there, and say look at the file editor code, why not, eh? So all the code's in there, you can scroll around, up, down, left, right, all good fun. Function key now makes the arrow keys into page up, page down. You can either do function, or if pressed again, it function lock. Then you can just scroll up and down the page to your heart's content. It's pretty speedy considering it's a e-ink screen. And then the left and right become end and home with the function on. You can obviously type away anything you want. And then obviously carriage returns, backspace, it all seems to work pretty well when I keep it in the shot. So that's obviously the editor. There will eventually be in there's an option to run the file. So I'm working with a guy, he's does a C-like interpreter. I think it's called ESP Live Script. I'll put a link in it into the description. So then you'll be able to actually physically type some code out, run it on the device, and then hopefully the eventual plan is you could run code which interfaces with the add-on card, so you can do things with that inside here, and it's all an all-in-one developer. So you might notice there's a bit more flickering between pages, just to make it a bit more like e-ink. Well, most of that is because you have to refresh the screen fully so you don't get ghosting. I have actually put that as a setting, so you can actually turn that off if you don't like it. So you risk a bit more ghosting, but things are a bit faster. So I've been playing with the calculator last night, so that now does work. So if we do some really complicated math, it tells us the answer, and then you can either carry on and do some more sums, or you can type a new number, just like a normal calculator really. Because it looks pretty much like a calculator, so it'd be a shame not to be a calculator as well. So most other things, like nothing else works basically, apart from the settings. So in there you can set the time, you can set, obviously, whether or not it does sleep, because one of the other big things that's changed in the firmware is the fact that the device actually goes to sleep. So as soon as you press a button, it goes to sleep, and then as soon as you press the button again, it wakes up, does what it needs to, goes straight back to sleep, and then that saves the battery. So all the time you're looking at the screen thinking, is that code right? It's just asleep, it's not using as much power. And then there's an option for screensaver, which technically we don't need a screensaver because it's an e-ink screen, that can stay on that screen forever. But I've been playing around a little bit, trying to make a little bit of a screensaver. Not going to make you wait 5 minutes till it comes on. Here's one I prepared earlier. So basically it just pops the logo on the front, hides the time and the battery at the top, just so that you don't get misled into thinking it's actually 3:30 when it's 5 o'clock and it's been asleep for ages. And then as soon as you press the key, it just wakes up and it's back in normal mode again. This one has actually got the fast switching turned on, so it's literally switch between menu, switch between editor, and then if you go into settings, you can switch between menus, switch between settings. So that's obviously a lot faster, a lot more sprightly, but you do risk getting some ghosting on there. I originally did it because when you were switching it on, put the logo on the screen initially, and then for the next 5 minutes you'd have the logo sat on the screen as a bit of a memory of what device it is, but it's not ideal for day-to-day usage, so I kind of did the full refresh, but obviously it's quick as just doing that, and then not the right button, and then just save that setting, and then from then on in you get fast refresh on there. It still works pretty well even on the press the right buttons. Even on there it's still, it's fast, there's no ghosting, it all looks pretty good. So that was all being done while I was waiting for boards, but the magical postman yesterday brought me this purple package from OSH Park, Osh Park, whatever you want to call them, and I've not actually opened this yet, so live unboxing. Get the old knife out, which needs a new blade in it. It's not sharp anymore by any means. Let's just get fingers in. So we have a pile of purple boards and no sticker. Oh no. So we have mesh, camera, power, LED. And that's camera, mesh, power, LEDs. That's for mesh. Right, so mesh boards are a bit of a revamp for the previous one I did for the LoRa board. That's now got a GPS module at the top and a tiny GPS antenna. We'll see if that works or not. I'm not holding my breath. So that will then obviously work with Meshtastic or Mesh Core or anything else like that. The power test is, I'm trying to revamp the power circuit. So basically, instead of using the fancy chips I'm using right now that just toggle the power, this is going to be an Atmega AT Mini, I think it is. I'll figure out which one it is. But that'll basically allow me to do a few more fancy things with the power switch, rather than just being a quick off and on. That'll be a full-blown switching thing. So there's the breakout board, which I did way back when. So essentially all the I/O pins are around the edges, and then all the pads in the middle are just pads you can solder onto. So that means you can basically make whatever you want as an add-on board. So you're not restricted to what I think you need. You can solder on a few wires onto a few LEDs and sensors and everything else like that. So it's a bit of a sort of make your own board. And then the camera board, if you've seen the little ESP32 cameras, so basically the camera will connect onto that. And then your CL-32 will have camera capabilities. So they all just fit. I need to trim the boards a bit. That's where I made myself live on camera. So they all just fit in the add-on slot. And then you've then got camera capabilities that your code can hopefully talk to that board. And you can read the camera and save the file and everything will be awesome. So yeah. I've also got a big box. Not mentioned it before, but it's not really an interesting box because it's so big it won't fit on the camera. But basically we've got boxes of components all ready to pop onto the boards. So yeah, there we have it. A bit more of an update on CL-32. See you next time.